Welcome to Cyberside Chats Live. Once a month, we actually show up live and we get to talk with you guys, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. Today, we're going to talk about encryption backdoors. Are they a security savior or a cyber risk?
Yeah.
You decide. I just thought that sounded good.
It did, yeah.
Really nice to see a lot of our regulars here today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're new, welcome. This will be an interesting conversation.
There will be.
So let's jump in and talk about what caused us to make this the topic of the day, which is that Apple has removed their advanced data protection feature for users in the UK. And actually, to back up a second, they received a secret order.
They did, yeah. The European government, the UK government actually asked them specifically to kneecap their encryption so that they could access files in the cloud.
Yeah, and what I thought was so interesting about that is that we know about the secret order because it's actually a criminal offense to reveal that you've received a secret order. So somebody in the know leaked this to the Washington Post about a month after it happened. And so we know that Apple was asked by the UK government not just to put a backdoor in their encryption software, but for UK residents, but for anybody in the world. So they wanted to be able to access private data for anybody, and Apple was not having that.
No, and I mean, up to this point, Apple's been asked to do things like this before.
Oh yeah.
But they have never actually taken any action. I mean, they've filed countersuits. They've resisted. This is the first time we've ever actually seen them take action and remove encryption from their system.
Yeah, but I mean, to their credit, they came right out and said, we will never put a backdoor in our systems, and they didn't.
Yeah.
What they ended up doing was just removing access to the end-to-end encryption feature, the advanced data encryption feature. For those of you that are Android users and may not be familiar with our Apple lingo, that is the feature that encrypts your data so you have the key and Apple can't get access to your stuff. And this was rolled out just a couple years ago, so actually Android was ahead of the curve. Your backups have been encrypted since 2018.
Oh yeah, forever.
Not forever.
But good for Apple. I mean, they're usually just a few years behind.
Oh my God! All right, we're gonna take this up later. But yeah, so this affects iCloud backups, this affects your photos, things like that. So right now, if you have enabled advanced data encryption or the advanced data protection feature, and Apple gets even a legitimate request to access your stuff, they can't do it, technologically speaking. And this was actually tested in, well, not this exact case, but remember the San Bernardino case in 2016?
Yeah, the iPhone 5C, I think it was, there was a terrorist attack, and the FBI really wanted to get into this Apple phone.
And the terrorist was dead, which is important because if the terrorist is alive, there's a way around that encryption.
Yeah, there's a way around it.
This is my perfect opportunity to once again show my favorite XKCD comic, really my favorite comic ever. I got to show this just a few weeks ago, but we'll do it again. So in a crypto nerd's imagination, it says, his laptop's encrypted. Let's build $1 million cluster to crack it. No good. It's 4096-bit RSA. Blast. Our evil plan is foiled. And then what actually would happen is his laptop's encrypted. Drug him and hit him with this $5 wrench until he tells us the password. Got it. So, in real life, if the terrorist is alive and you have their phone, there are multiple ways to get around that encryption, particularly if you have access to the device.
Yeah, but in this case, I mean, obviously the FBI really wants to get into the guy's phone. Law enforcement wants to be in there.
And they got backups from Apple legitimately.
They did, but Apple flat out told them, we can't do that.
No, they got backups from Apple, but they had stopped the the terrorists had stopped backups.
Right,
in the San Bernardino case.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've read the details of that case, but it's been a bit. But the interesting thing was the FBI wanted Apple to write custom firmware for that phone to remove some of the actual safety features, like the limit on the number of pins you could put in, how fast you could put them in. They wanted them to kneecap the security of the phone.
And why would they want that?
Right, yeah.
Because they wanted to brute force it and be able to try as many pins as they wanted, which still, at least reporters calculated, would take 5.5 years to break.
Oh yeah, it's.
So maybe they decided it wasn't worth the fight, or maybe they just found a way around it.
That's like what they say with password cracking. It's mathematically improbable that you'll actually be able to do that.
But you could get it on the first try.
Yeah, you could get lucky.
Like Wordle. I got Wordle in 2 yesterday.
Nice.
Bam.
There you go.
Anyway, where were we?
So I think we need to talk about why the removal of these features is really a problem, right?
Because it makes sense if someone's a terrorist or if they're a criminal, why wouldn't you want to get access to their stuff?
Sure. No, I mean, from law enforcement's point of view, I can see why they would want this. It makes sense. But from my point of view,
tell me more.
No, I don't want the security of my device
What do you have to hide, Matt?
It doesn't matter. That's the fun part.
Oh, okay. But in all seriousness, when you put a backdoor into a system, it can be abused.
Yeah.
And anytime you weaken security, that's what you're doing. You're weakening security across the board. And we have seen case after case after case where the bad guys have taken advantage of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are the best person to tell our audience about Eternal Blue. Because you handled a bunch of ransomware cases as a result of that.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, so Eternal Blue was an exploit that was part of a big trove that was stolen from the NSA by a group called the Shadow Brokers.
Yeah.
And so the NSA, to give background on this, the NSA was like stockpiling cyber weapons.
Yeah.
Which, again, from an
no
espionage
problem.
standpoint, I can see why they'd want to.
We trust our government, we trust the NSA, and they're going to keep it super duper secure.
Yeah, they will never lose it.
So uber secure.
So this group called the Shadow Brokers was able to breach their network and was able to hijack these cyber weapons. And they made it out into the open market eventually.
And they dumped them to the world.
They dumped them out to the world, and they posted on Twitter. They had their own website set up. But the problem here is that a lot of organizations didn't know these exploits existed. Like Microsoft, as an example,
zero-day exploits
did not know. Yeah, these are
that
zero
the
days.
NSA was hiding from the vendor.
And they were like full-on remote code execution. Like, you can break in, get admin, completely take a system over very easily. And that's what ended up happening. Like the NotPetya attack, and we saw like a bunch of other ransomware attacks take place that utilized this exact series of exploits.
Well, and I think NotPetya is still counted as the most expensive cyber attack to this day.
Yeah,
it was like $10 billion.
$10.5 billion or something.
Global.
Well, because they took out FedEx and they took out Maersk. And a bunch of other huge organizations.
I remember 200,000 computers were hit in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like compromised because of Eternal Blue.
Well, and it's wormable. Like, you can script this into your malware and it just spreads itself through the network. Like,
I almost said Baltimore, but then Baltimore refuted that.
Baltimore didn't refute it. Baltimore claimed this is what happened.
Oh, yes, and that was the NSA's fault that they got ransomware back in like 2019.
And then the Robin Hood ransomware group came out and said, no, that's not what we did.
Yeah.
And,
Thanks, criminals.
Yeah.
Anyway, where were we? Backdoors or security weapons, things like that. They can be used for what you might consider good, but it also increases risk for everybody. And so for the same reasons we need nuclear disarmament, we really do. There is a case for cyber disarmament.
There really is.
Back in 1993, the Clinton administration proposed something called the Clipper chip, which in retrospect is, how many of you, raise your hand, we can see you. Raise your hand if you remember the Clipper chip, right? This is dating us. 1993, the Clinton administration says, hey, we really want everybody to have access to strong encryption so the bad guys can't hear your phone calls or listen to your modem conversations.
Right.
Yeah, this was supposed to be hardware built into modems. And the idea is that it was a hardware chip that would give law enforcement a backdoor so that they could tap your communications.
Yeah, but it was fine because they would take the encryption key and they would split it in half, and then
God.
they would give it to like 2 authorized parties, and so they'd have to coordinate with each other if they ever wanted to.
And we know that 2 different government agencies are never going to coordinate, so we're safe.
Yeah.
And the public was like, no.
Public just said no.
That's not happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, can you blame them?
Well, but what we ended up getting was stuff like what's happening with email, right?
Yeah.
So what we could have had end-to-end encrypted email. In fact, at LMG, we do. Since day 0 of the company, we have had end-to-end encrypted email where we hold the keys to our internal communications, and Microsoft does not.
Yeah.
And honestly, over the years, that has become a pain in the neck because when you check your email over the web, you can't see some stuff easily. It would have been very possible for Microsoft to build in a little like encrypt button and actually give people the ability to use their own keys.
Yeah.
But frankly, over the past 2 or 3 decades, tech companies wanted to read your email. They wanted to mine it for information. They're less interested in that now because they realize it's a liability too.
Well, I mean, but Google still does it.
Yeah.
It's in their terms of use. Like they say they're going to read it.
They're going to advertise and things like that.
What do they say? They could perform your emails?
Oh, yes, they can publicly perform your emails. That's right. That was a good one in their terms of service. Check it out. It's probably still there today. I am not a lawyer. And yeah, I mean, I think creating, encrypted email. So our government also, of course, wanted to be able to read your email. And as a result, if somebody gets access to a device or if somebody guesses your password and breaks into your email on the web, they have access to all your sweet, juicy information. And that, boys and girls, is why we have lost over $55 billion in fraud because of business email compromise.
Yeah, most costly kind of cybercrime.
If we actually put our emails in end-to-end encrypted envelopes that Microsoft and Google and others could not actually open, then the world would be a safer place and we would be less at risk. And we wouldn't have to rely on services to send fake encrypted emails that are really annoying.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a whole nother ball of wax. Check out our YouTube webinar, by the way, How Encryption Works, for a more detailed rant about this and how you can actually set up like real encrypted email. That's convenient. We do talk about
that. I'm impressed you didn't soapbox nearly as much about this as I thought you
were. I'm not done. Okay, we'll talk more later.
All right.
Okay, so where were we? We were talking about Apple and the fact that they were asked to put a backdoor. So why is that a problem?
I mean, it's a problem because, as we saw with all the other cyber weapons out there, if there's a backdoor in a product, there's no guarantee that a bad guy's not going to find it.
Right.
Like the one we were reading about with the Vodafone out of Greece in 2003 and 2004. Vodafone had a built-in mechanism that was supposed to be for law enforcement that would allow people to wiretap those phones.
Right.
And somebody, not the government and not law enforcement, wiretapped like 100 different people's phones that worked for the Greek government. So a bad guy was just actively monitoring those phone calls, and it's because they figured out this backdoor into the device actually existed.
Right.
I mean, we have to kind of anticipate that's going to happen again, right?
Right. Well, and the bad guys also target systems that are used for, quote, lawful interception. And we saw that when Google got hacked. And Google did an amazing PR job. Like, if you Google got hacked, you don't really see a whole lot.
Yeah.
But instead, what they were basically like, it is America versus China. And hackers broke into Google. This was, I think, as part of the Operation Aurora attacks back in 2010.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is they targeted the lawful intercept system that Google had set up to give law enforcement access, back-end access to people's emails without their knowledge. So hackers, nation-state attackers, were targeting that system because it was essentially a backdoor already set up for them. They didn't even have to try that hard.
Yeah, that was really nice of Google.
Really nice of Google.
Yeah.
Anyway, it led to some tensions between the U.S. and China, but, par for the course.
Yeah.
But I was thinking last night, it was like the middle of the night, and I was like, what Apple was asked to do by the British government is going to, and what they did is going to cause some real problems for corporations, particularly those that rely on like data centers in the UK or things like that. Like if you think about it, Europe and the UK have an agreement that you can have free flow of data from Europe to the UK. But now you can see there is a huge rift and a huge difference between what they consider to be appropriate levels of privacy. And for anybody operating within the UK, if there's concern that the UK government is going to issue these secret orders and get back-end access to data, like, would you feel comfortable putting your sensitive information in a data center in the UK? We know about Apple's secret order, but what don't we know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the Cloud Act, too, which is like a great example of this in play. Like back in 2016, Microsoft was ordered by the government to turn over email data for a criminal investigation, and they said no because the data was actually stored on a server in Ireland, not here in the United States.
Right.
And so the government, in response to that, like passed an entire law stating that it does not matter where your data is. There needs to be this free flow of data, and they also mandate that other countries kind of follow along with that in order to be a part of it. This may actually be a violation of that act. Like there's talk in the government about it right now. So
yeah. I mean, the more complex this gets, the harder it is for corporations to really understand when is your data secure and when is it at higher risk.
Yeah.
And if you have to worry about vendors in other places giving governments access to your data, that really limits what kinds of cloud providers we can rely on. And then you have to think about who are those cloud providers.
Well, and again, that's assuming you even know where your data is sitting in the first place. So,
exactly.
Yeah,
I know there have been good things that come out of secret backdoors, like the Rebel ransomware gang basically destroying themselves.
Oh, this is like my favorite story.
Okay.
So, flashback to 4th of July weekend in 2021, the Rebel ransomware group took over the managed service software for a company called Kaseya. And in one fell swoop, they were able to encrypt, according to them anyway, over 1 million computers. It's the single biggest ransomware outbreak in cybersecurity history.
Right.
And like nobody had to pay the ransom. Like they totally shot themselves in the foot here because Kaseya managed to get their hands on a universal decryptor for Rebel's ransomware. Yeah. Not just for this attack, but like all of it up to that point, basically.
Well, and it's interesting that REvil had created that. First of all, that takes advanced mathematical knowledge.
It does, and you can tell there was a business decision that was made there, in which we see other ransomware groups do this too, where they say, like, if the affiliate doesn't give you your encryption key, call us and we'll give you one.
Well, in Lockbit, when their quote affiliate encrypted the Sick Kids Hospital up in Canada,
I remember that.
They apologized and they were like, "This affiliate is no longer part of our program, and here's the key. We gave it back." So it's, from a business perspective, it gives ransomware gangs the ability to kind of oversee and make sure that there's no reputational damage and things like that. But it ended up destroying REvil's whole infrastructure.
It did, yeah. I mean, up to that point. And like REvil came out and they had their own explanation as to how the decryptor actually got released. Kaseya's line, and the line we get from the government, is that the FBI actually got a hold of the key during an international law enforcement operation where they were able to break into part of their infrastructure. REvil came out and they said one of their affiliates fat-fingered a decryptor and accidentally sent this universal decryptor out. But either way, like, the FBI was able to provide Kaseya with this key. They didn't have to pay the $70 million ransom at that point. And basically none of the people who were encrypted in this event ended up really losing data, which was, like, amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah, there was not a lot of fallout from that,
no, there really wasn't.
How massive the problem was.
No, I think there were like 2 people that we know of that paid the ransom early because it was before the decryptor got released.
That's right. Well, I mean, the bottom line is that a backdoor is a backdoor.
It is.
And whether it's a master key for everything or a backdoor code in some tech software or whatever it is, when you weaken security for what you think is the purpose of good, it can also be used for evil. Mm-hmm. And so we just have to think about that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the encryption battle develops and if we'll see anything more from the UK. But certainly I think what Apple does next is going to be fascinating.
It will be, and it'll potentially set kind of a precedent that other governments might use to go after other technology vendors. I mean, this is not the first time we've seen governments say we want encryption to be removed from either a service. I mean, after the 9/11 attacks took place, there was talk in our government about outlawing encryption, which would never actually happen, obviously. But
well, and the problem is that the criminals can still have access to encryption.
Yeah, it's math.
If you're a law-abiding citizen, you might be like, okay, I'm not going to use strong cryptography, but the criminals are still going to use it.
Yeah, no, it's just math, and criminals can do math. You can't outlaw math. Well,
you can outlaw math.
You can outlaw math,
but it's not a good idea. Okay, so what are our takeaways here? Number 1, stay aware of changes to encryption and security regulations. If you know somebody who is an iPhone user in the UK, they no longer have access to end-to-end encryption for their Apple devices. And that's going to cause some business issues for the UK, for anybody in the UK.
I think it probably will, yeah.
But keep track of those regulatory developments because they do actually have an impact on security and compliance. Number 2?
So we really want to look at assessing vendors and assessing our supply chain risks. Like, if we're using a product and they are not offering end-to-end encryption, or if they are, we need to make sure that it's actually strong encryption, that it is not something that's potentially compromised or something along those lines. I mean, it's easy enough to do if we vet our vendors correctly, but we do need to make sure that we're doing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Number 3, definitely advocate internally for strong end-to-end encryption. And one thing that I think is really important here is that everybody needs to understand that encryption in transit is, see, I'm getting back on my soapbox. Encryption in transit is not the same thing as end-to-end encryption.
Yeah.
Encryption in transit, for example, a normal email, if people say it's encrypted, usually that means it's encrypted from you to the next hop on in the path to your mail server, and Google or Microsoft or whoever is hosting your email can unlock that mail. And that means so can attackers if they get your password. So when we talk about end-to-end encryption, we mean that you hold the key. And when we really focus on end-to-end encryption, you are dramatically improving your security. And there are ways to make it usable as well. So when people talk about, oh, it's hard to use, there's definitely tools that can make it very easy to use.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The other thing you need to do, and this comes more into a proactive security thing, but you need to make sure that you're implementing good security solutions to catch things like these low noise kind of attacks that a lot of people don't catch. If there's something like a backdoor in your firewall or your routers or something like that. I mean, it's not going to be usually setting off like alarm bells and fireworks and things like that. We just want to make sure we are keeping an eye on our networks and we're taking the steps that we need to keep them safe.
Yeah. And finally, bring this up with your information sharing groups, with any groups that you're part of. Mention mention your concerns about tech companies needing to remove encryption, and find out what your community thinks. Let's make sure that this topic stays on everybody's radar, because it really is fundamental to security and fundamental to all of us and our whole programs.
Yeah.
So we will be at RSA next month. If you will be at RSA, please drop us a line. We're going to be running a live tabletop exercise. I'm so excited. It's about deepfakes and voice cloning. I think our room holds 100. Last time it sold out well ahead of time. So if you want to join us, please make sure you sign up well in advance. And we're also doing another talk on Monday at RSA on AI and how it can be used, how hackers are using AI to analyze software, software, and create their own exploits. So again, if you're at RSA, drop us a line. It'd be great to see you. Great to have coffee and hopefully see you at one of our talks. And with that, we'll close it out, and then we'll have time for questions and discussions. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. We will see you next week in the recorded version on the internet. And time for some questions.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and open up for Q&A if anyone has anything they'd like to chat about.
Yeah. And while we're waiting for questions, we did miss one topic.
We did. You want to talk about Juniper?
Yes, I totally want to talk about Juniper.
Let's talk about Juniper.
Yeah. Okay. Fill us in.
Okay. So in 2015, Juniper Networks, the hardware vendor, they manufacture things like firewalls and edge devices, routers, things like that. They announced that they had found some unauthorized backdoor code in the firmware of their devices. So from like a fundamental level, every single one of these was compromised by someone.
For years.
For years at this point, yeah.
Years.
So what this would actually let people do is decrypt like VPN traffic, which is not a great thing.
No.
You kind of rely on VPN for privacy.
Didn't it also give people admin access over the device?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's bad too.
Yeah, pretty bad. So there was some speculation about where this code came from.
And what was the name of the NSA program that we think might have been related?
So in 2013, Edward Snowden released some information, and Der Spiegel picked it up and put an article on it. It's called Feed Through, I remember. But this was an operation that was against Juniper, basically, and it was supposedly, allegedly, the NSA backdooring their way into these systems to spy on people, like people inside the United States. So
we can't prove that.
We can't. This is all speculation, and reports from let's just say, notorious data leaker. But I mean,
surprised he hasn't been pardoned yet.
I kind of am too. But yeah, again, it's the entire do backdoors actually matter? Like, if there's a backdoor in your product, what's going to actually happen?
Well, and how many products have backdoors now that we may or may not find out about in the next few years?
Do you remember the pictures of the so-called Cisco Intercept program the NSA was doing?
By the way, last chance for questions if you have any. No, tell me.
Yeah, so there were some pictures. This also came from Snowden. There were pictures released that was supposed to be the inside of like an NSA facility, and they were intercepting Cisco devices between Cisco and their customers and installing their own custom chips with their own custom firmware.
Oh, yes, that's right. I do remember that. Yeah, that's a little scary.
Again, speculation. We don't know that it actually happened, but
anyway, okay. I think probably the only question was mine. So if you think of anything afterwards, feel free to drop us a line. We're available on LinkedIn. You can email us. Oh, we got something. What was that, Michael?
Oh, Mike says, how do we know that Juniper has corrected the issue on current equipment?
I mean, that's a really good question. Juniper did come. Was it Juniper that announced it themselves?
Mm-hmm.
I believe
they self-reported.
Yeah, so it seems like they were not in cahoots, or they didn't seem to be as a corporation in cahoots. There was speculation that it was an insider attack and somebody was hired, which is certainly very concerning. But they at least came out and made a public statement that they had corrected it. And I believe there was some movement away from Juniper at the time. This was very impactful.
Yeah, Juniper suffered. They've come back since then. I mean, Juniper Networks is a big name in the security industry at this point, but they were frowned upon for a little while because, I mean, customers didn't think they could trust them.
Yeah. Well, and we have seen security companies getting targeted over and over, starting with the Operation Aurora attacks, where Symantec was targeted, Rackspace was targeted, Google was targeted. We saw RSA hit around the same time, and their business never bounced back.
Not really, yeah.
And in fact, 2 government contractors came out and said that they were hacked because RSA got hacked.
Yeah, because their key fob devices, like the like the root code for them was stolen.
Yeah, the seeds.
Yeah.
Well, and they didn't even admit that right away. I think that was part of the problem. They weren't as transparent as they could have been.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, I think we really have to be concerned about the security of our endpoints and our software and hardware, especially because it's manufactured all over the world. So
True.
What we're doing to intercept firmware, why wouldn't China be doing that too? Why wouldn't other countries?
Remember a couple years ago when we heard that story about like over 1 million Cisco devices that were counterfeit, that were being sold as regular ones, and God only knows where those came from.
Well, I mean, that takes us back to one of our first Cyberside Chats with the FTC's CyberMark.
Yeah.
Where there's now going to be a QR code and a Federal Trade Commission mark, and you can scan the code to understand the source of the product. Like, why can't those be counterfeit? And then we have to worry about QR code phishing as well.
Well, yeah, that'll be fun.
So, yeah. Thanks for the question, Michael. Appreciate it. And with that, again, drop us a line if you guys think about anything else. Thanks so much for tuning in live today. We will see you next week on the internet, and we will see you live again next month. Take care.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks.